This briefing is about managing the risk of lifeboat accidents. The consequences of these accidents are all too often fatal, so additional control measures are needed to stay safe. It is a fact that on-load release systems can, and all too frequently do, kill seafarers. In Part 2 of this presentation, we will discuss the meaning of the term on-load. Part 3 will show how to deal with the possible problem of not being able to release the lifeboat painter. And finally, in Part 4, we will show two possible measures that could be adopted to ensure that the lifeboat does not drop, even if the lifeboat lifting hooks are inadvertently opened. The fitting of on-load release systems on lifeboats became mandatory for all vessels constructed after the 1st of July 1986. This was as a result of several high-profile incidents involving loss of life during lifeboat evacuations utilizing lifeboats equipped with fixed hook releases, or offload release. The International Maritime Organization, IMO, therefore stipulated that lifeboats be fitted with a central control release system that ensured that both lower full blocks were released simultaneously, even if under load. However, this does mean that the hooks can be disengaged at any point during the launching and recovery process, either as a result of human error or mechanical defect, leading to possible tragic consequences. As a result of the legislation, designers came up with various systems in order to comply, and many of them have become over-complicated. Add to this the fact that original manufacturers' operating instructions posted inside or adjacent to the lifeboat are often difficult to understand, and it becomes all too clear how accidents can occur. Another problem has arisen in that many of the original manufacturers have ceased trading, and consequently spare parts and original operating instructions are, in many cases, no longer available. The Marine Accident Investigation Branch, or MAIB, produced a study cataloging 125 accidents and incidents involving lifeboats. The most serious of these accidents, mostly involving fatalities, were caused as a result of problems with the on-load release gear. According to MAIB data, in a 10-year period, 12 seafarers were killed and 87 injured. The MAIB database is reasonably extensive, but it is not exhaustive. It is therefore likely that the true figures are in fact significantly higher, as many accidents and incidents may go unreported. But even one death is a death too many. Currently, there are in the region of 80 different types of approved on-load release hooks in use on lifeboats, and no seafarer can hope to be familiar with them all. On-load may be defined as a method of disengaging the lifeboat lifting hooks, even if the blocks and falls are still under load. The design concept is to enable the lifeboat to be disengaged from both lower full blocks simultaneously, even if they are under load, perhaps as a result of the vessel still making headway or the boat having been launched into rough seas, a strong current, or a tidal stream. It was never intended to be used as a means of disengaging the lifting hooks of a lifeboat that was not waterborne. Problems can result from the fact that most on-load release systems are designed as unstable. They rely upon the release system to maintain the hooks in the closed position, rather than to open them. In other words, if the hooks fail, they open rather than remain closed. Lack of proper maintenance, human error, and even the motion of the lifeboat during a launch or recovery can cause the system to release, particularly if key components have become worn or have been replaced with non-standard parts. The on-load release system will have at least two safety features built in. Firstly, a safety pin prevents the release handle being operated. A positive and deliberate action is required to remove the safety pin and operate the release handle. Secondly, the system is effectively armed by water pressure. Until the lifeboat is waterborne, the release system remains in the safe or closed position, so that in theory the release handle cannot be operated. Once waterborne, water pressure releases a locking device and moves it from the safe position to the open position. This part of the system is known as the hydrostatic interlock. At this point, after removing the safety pin, the release handle may be operated and the hooks disengaged. Some systems may have additional safety features. For example, the lever may need to be engaged in the release system before operation. Operating the release handle allows the locking devices at each hook to turn, thereby permitting the hook to open. However, it is possible to override the hydrostatic interlock by breaking the inspection window at the central hook release control unit, holding the lock indicator in the open position and operating the release handle. The hooks will now disengage, regardless of the position of the lifeboat. There are no routine circumstances which require the ship's crew to override the hydrostatic interlock. Releasing a lifeboat that is not waterborne, even from heights of less than 1 meter, may cause death or serious injury and result in damage to the lifeboat structure and possible capsize and/or sinking of the lifeboat. There is a greater probability of inadvertent disengagement due either to the hooks having been incorrectly reset following a previous launch or a mechanical fault with the hook system itself. Life-saving equipment is not immune to design flaws and wear and tear. All crew members should thoroughly familiarize themselves with the ship's SOLAS training manual and any company procedures which will incorporate risk assessment control measures for the equipment. If performing any maintenance or checks on the release system, always connect the hanging off pendants before starting. It is your lives that are at stake. Never allow your shipmates to bypass use of the hanging off pendants. Because of the number of previous and ongoing incidents, SOLAS regulations no longer require crew members to be inside the lifeboat during mandatory drill launches and recoveries. The Australian Maritime Safety Authority, AMSA, have even gone one step further, by expressly forbidding its surveyors to enter any lifeboat that has not had the on-load release system bypassed. However, the need to understand the workings of the on-load release system is not diminished. The one time when you really need this equipment to work is going to be the one time when you don't get a second chance. Get it right, and get it right the first time. Following a successful launch, the lifeboat is now waterborne and disconnected from the falls. However, one final connection remains between lifeboat and ship, the permanent painter. The purpose of the permanent painter is to assist in maintaining the lifeboat's position beneath the falls after launching to allow disconnection. If the vessel is still making way through the water, or if the lifeboat has been launched into heavy seas, or from lack of proper maintenance, It may be that it is not possible to release the painter using the painter release system. Once the lifeboat is full of people, in a relatively confined area wearing survival suits and life jackets, it can mean that releasing the painter becomes a problem. If possible, use the lifeboat engine to take the weight off the painter. It is likely that the capacity of the lifeboat exceeds the actual number of crew on the vessel. If this is the case, seating should be allocated in such a way that clear access to the painter release system is assured. If neither of these actions work, then cutting the permanent painter may be the only option. Although a lifeboat knife and 2 axes are supplied as part of the lifeboat standard equipment, they may not cut the painter quickly. However, if each lifeboat was equipped with an additional serrated blade knife, this would probably provide a quick and safe method of cutting the permanent painter in emergency circumstances. As previously mentioned, SOLAS regulations no longer require crew members to be on board the lifeboat for launching and recovery. But if the lifeboat is to be launched empty, how are the crew to board? The IMO recommend that if a lifeboat is to be launched with its operating crew, it should first be lowered and raised with no one on board to ascertain that the arrangement functions correctly. The problem here is that the test launch only proves functionality for that particular launch. It does not prove functionality for a subsequent launch with crew on board. In December 2007, the UK Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, MCA, recommended that because of the serious nature of the hazard posed by on-load release systems, consideration should be given to the immediate implementation of a system whereby maintenance shackles are rigged to bypass the on-load release hooks. This would restore crew confidence in the safety of the lifeboat, enabling them to be on board for launching and recovery, an important consideration if the crew are to be confident in operating the lifeboat in an emergency. The Bahamas Maritime Authority have gone a step further, supported by the UK Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, and issued guidance for the fitting of fall preventer devices, or FPDs. Nylon loop strops of sufficient safe working load are recommended as fall preventer devices. These can be connected between each lower fall block and a suitable fixed point on the lifeboat. Wires could be used, but the advantage of using nylon is that it can absorb shock loads and can be easily cut in an emergency. The advantage of a loop strop is that only one standing part needs to be cut to release it. If each lifeboat has been equipped with an additional serrated blade knife, this would probably provide a quick and safe method of cutting a nylon fall preventer device in an emergency. The fall preventer devices should be of such length to ensure there is no slack when connected. This will prevent possible catastrophic shock loading to the fall preventer devices and the persons in the lifeboat should the lifeboat release hooks inadvertently open. Do not use the hanging off pennants or the foul weather recovery strops as fall preventer devices. They are only to be used for the purpose for which they were designed. A second option is to replace the existing lifeboat lifting hooks with hooks where the on-load release system can be locked once correctly reset. The Safe Launch Lifeboat Release Hook is one such system. When the hook has been reset, a safety pin is inserted through the hook, making it impossible for the hook to inadvertently open. So remember, the two hazards identified are 1. inadvertent release of the lifeboat onload hooks, the consequences of which can be death, which means the risk is unacceptably high. Use fall preventer devices to control the risk and stay safe. 2. Being unable to release the lifeboat permanent painter in an emergency, the consequences of which might potentially be fatal, which means the risk could be high. For cutting the painter, provide a serrated blade knife to control the risk and stay safe.